Welcome to our final day of Cap Times Idea Fest #9. We have a great lineup of sessions in store for you this afternoon and evening. You've probably figured out by now that I'm Paul Fanlon, publisher of the Capital Times. And I'd like to say again, thank you. I'd like to say again how much we appreciate your support by buying tickets for our event this week, and how much it helps the Capital Times. We've been serving this community with local news and opinion, progressive opinion, since 1917. And my friend Dave Zwiefel down here, editor emeritus, has been here for most of that, not quite. Dave has the distinction of having been hired by William T. Evu, which is pretty impressive. I'd also like to thank our sponsors, who you can see on the signage behind me. Their support, like yours, makes this festival all it is. Today's first program features Dane County Executive Melissa Agard and Madison Mayor Satya Rhodes-Conway, with moderator John Nichols, the longtime associate editor of the Capital Times. They will talk about challenges they face in leading our progressive city and county against an overtly hostile White House. They'll also talk about federal cuts to Medicaid and other programs, as well as the ever-present threat of immigration agents coming into our region. But first, a bit of background about the two. Melissa Agard was born and raised in Madison and graduated from East High School and eventually the University of Wisconsin-Madison. She was a small business owner and Dane County board supervisor before being elected to the Assembly, the state assembly, in 2012. She eventually served 5 terms in the legislature. She was elected to the state Senate in 2020 and was unanimously chosen by colleagues to serve as Senate Democratic leader in 2022. She was elected as Dane County Executive last fall. Mayor Satya Rhodes-Conway was born in New Mexico and grew up in Ithaca, New York. She has degrees from Smith College and the University of California at Irvine. She moved to Madison in 2002 and has lived here since. She served on the Madison City Council between 2007 and 2013. Prior to being an alder, she was a senior associate at the University of Wisconsin-Madison's Center on Wisconsin Strategy, a progressive think tank. She was elected mayor in 2019 and was reelected in 2023. It's an honor to have them both here today, and we very much appreciate their agreeing to join us at Idea Fest. Please give them all a warm welcome. Thank you.
Now, I know that asking you to come out at 2:15 in the afternoon on what is the singularly most beautiful day in the history of Wisconsin is a tall ask. And I'm very pleased that so many of you are here. And how many of you were here last night for Tim Walz? He was amazing, and it's relevant to our two guests tonight, because one of the most incredible things that he said is that you ought to, when you get power, spend down your political capital. Don't sit there with your power and enjoy it or do whatever goes with it. Spend the capital, do big things, make things happen. And his argument was, because people are instinctually progressive, if you do big, bold, progressive things, spending down your political capital won't end your political capital. You'll gain more of it. And we have 2 women with us today who have spent a lot of political capital over a long time and proven just how true Tim Walz's words are. So I want to start, and before I start, let me do one thing to emphasize. You had some introductions there, but this is a significant thing. When we started last night with Walls, we talked about the fact that in Dane County, he and Kamala Harris got 75% of the vote. In Madison, I think you could tell me was it 84%? 84% of the vote. And in some of the precincts surrounding the area, it was well over 90. And Walls liked that and said, well, I didn't do that well in Minnesota. But it is important to understand that both of these women that are with us have been elected and re-elected with landslides. Big, big victories. And so they're precisely the kind of people that prove, I think, Walls' point, but also tell us something about the politics of this place. And before we get into some of the deeper things with what it means to be a local leader in the age of Trump, I wanted to ask each of you kind of, what was it? Where was the spark? What was the thing that actually made you decide to cross that line and go into electoral politics in particular? And why don't we start with Melissa, because I know that, Melissa, you grew up in the political culture of this place.
Yeah, so this has always been my home, and it's where I've chosen to put my roots down and to raise my family. And frankly, I never imagined that I would run for office. I think you hear that from elected officials and politicians, but it truly is the case. I'm an off-the-charts introvert. I grew up in a poor family. Life isn't comfortable as a politician. But one of the things that my dad taught me when I was young is that I was really good at complaining. And that he encouraged me to think of solutions and not just complain. If you see something that you don't like or that you would like to change, roll up your sleeves. And you may not be successful at solving that problem, but you're going to learn something about yourself, you're going to learn something about your community, and you're going to continue moving forward. And that ultimately is what drew me to politics, was believing that we can do better. And as a young mom of small children, I wanted to be a good role model for them. I wanted them to know that they mattered, and that each of us has a role to play in making our community be better. And that's really what opened the door to where I am now.
And you went up, that's good. Yeah. And you went up the ladder in kind of the most classic sense, right? County board, legislature, state senate, then running for the top position in the fastest growing, most dynamic county in the state. And I'm interested that you talked about being a radical introvert. Is being in politics, does it in a way make it easier if you're an introvert because you at least have some reason to talk to people?
Gee, I haven't thought about it that way.
I think about it all the time.
That's a very silver lining interpretation of it.
That may be. But I think that's I know so many people that go into journalism because they are introverts. Oddly, that wasn't my problem. But I do know a lot of people who do, and they say, it's kind of useful. You come in with a notebook, and at least you have a reason to approach someone and talk to them. So I'm just wondering about that.
I think I saw it more as a hurdle to try to overcome. When you run for office, one of the most important things that you do early on is getting out of your house and knock on other people's doors and have conversations and listen authentically to them. And I'll say, for me, the hardest door was my own door. Walking out of my door. But once I was able to get out in the community and hear about people's dreams and their vision for what it is that we can do together, how it is that we can solve the problems in our community, and how we can link arms and build for better, that buoyed me, that filled me with hope, and it made going to the next door even easier. And at the end of the day, I realized being an introvert is more of a me problem than a community problem, and I needed to lean in, and it's okay being uncomfortable. I think if each of us thinks about a time in our lives where we made a difference in our community, in our family, it probably started with a moment of discomfort, and that helps me push forward.
The last thing I'm going to follow on this was that the place where I really saw you kind of rocket to, or kind of move into the center of the politics of this place was around the uprising in 2011. And it's safe to say that you didn't completely agree with Scott Walker's approach. And
That's safe to say.
yes, but I also thought that I don't think anybody would have thought of you as an introvert during that time because you were really there every day, often with your solidarity armband on, and very much in the thick of it. Was that tell me about that for you as a moment.
That moment to me felt very much magnetic. What was happening wasn't what I learned in my classrooms in our amazing Madison public schools from my amazing public school teachers. Government is supposed to work for the people. The people are supposed to have a voice, and it's government's job to listen to them. And I was drawn to the Capitol with my children in tow. My youngest is 15, and he was a new baby strapped to my chest as I was walking, and there were times when I lost my toddler, and thank goodness for friendly people who reunited us in the Ian's Pizza stations in the Capitol. You all remember that? My slightly older children appreciated being able to know there were snacks and safe places for them to be. But it really is that promise of what's inscribed on the ceiling of the governor's conference room and what I was taught in my schools, that the will of the people is the law of the land. That's the way it should be. And I felt very much like what was happening in the Capitol wasn't what my friends and neighbors were asking for. It wasn't how government was taught to me in my classrooms, and it wasn't what the teachers were at that moment teaching my own children. And when I saw my teachers and my children's teachers and my friends and neighbors marching around the Capitol, it was a place that I was drawn to. It was a sense of community. It was where we could bring our silos down and we could solve a problem together. And I think it was a magical moment. Did we cross the finish line in making our community better? No. In retrospect, are there some things that I think we could talk about that could have been and should have been done differently? Absolutely. But considering the moment we are in right now, I do think that was a flashpoint. Wisconsin was a flashpoint that has created the federal moment that we are in right now. And you know, here in Wisconsin, we are building forward. Here in Dane County and the city of Madison, we are doing pretty well, despite what it was that was happening all those years ago around the Capitol building. And that is what gives me hope in knowing that despite the chaos that is happening and the harm that is happening at the federal level and across this globe, quite frankly, in many other countries, that we are still here. And we are strong and we're resilient and we have not given our dreams up. And I believe we're going to be able to continue to be examples at the federal level because what we experienced.
Melissa Sargent.
We'll say Agard.
Agard, my apologies. I'm so sorry, Melissa. Melissa Agard. And we are so lucky that you came out of that activism and into leadership. Mayor, you chose to come to Madison, which is in its own way a very honorable act, right? Because you had a chance as a young, very brilliant woman to go many, many places. You chose Madison. Why?
Well, I love your sort of reinterpretation of history, John. At the time, I had finished my master's. I'm a failed PhD.
Which makes you a typical Madisonian.
It makes me, perhaps. No, I think actually the typical Madisonian has the PhD, but is not working in that field anymore. But no, I'm a failed PhD. I was a scientist. I am a scientist, I guess. I'm not a practicing scientist. And I wanted to save the rainforest, and that didn't really work out. But I couldn't get a job. I was teaching, which was great, so I sort of had a stable job, but it wasn't what I wanted to do in the long term. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and so I took an internship here in Madison. It was supposed to be for 3 months. I was a month in.
It's home now.
Yeah, I know, right? Like when I was a month in, and I was on the phone with a friend from California, and I was extolling the virtues of downtown Madison and the farmers market, and it was a beautiful fall day, and there was a Badger game, and my friend said to me, "You're never coming back to California, are you?" And I said, "No, I actually don't think I am." So Madison is magic. You know, it has that magnetic pull for so many people who come here, whether it is for the university or a job or whatever it might be. So many of us end up feeling like this is home and that we want to be here, forever. And that was true of me as well. I also think Madison is very like Ithaca, New York, which is where I grew up, except pleasantly bigger. And so it felt very comfortable to me when I first moved here.
And a part of your mayoralty, and I think even your service up to this point, has been to work very hard to make sure that Madison is welcoming to people who choose this as the place where they want to live, and also to make sure that those who maybe come in your circumstance, not with every advantage economically or whatever, that this can work for them. Yeah. And I wonder if your experience of coming here in that way influences some of how you think about this.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I reflect often on the fact that, I did have the ability, I was a lecturer at a university. I didn't have a large salary. And then I was an intern, and I really didn't have a large salary. And my first place that I lived in Madison was renting a room in the upstairs apartment of a duplex on Jenny Street. And that was what I could afford. It was what I could find. But over the years, I was able then to move into my own apartment and then to be able, on a university salary, buy the home that I still live in. And by the time that I was thinking about, when I was on the city council or thinking about running for mayor, what I was seeing was that opportunity was slipping away. And that we as a community weren't producing enough housing to keep up with the people who wanted to live here. And I was particularly learning, you asked, what is it that inspired us, or what's the motivation? I'm a total policy wonk. And I was studying here at the university what was happening in other cities around the country and watching their housing markets become more and more exclusionary, more and more expensive, and seeing the demographic transitions that go along with that. And I really passionately did not want that to happen to Madison. And that is among the reasons, one of the primary reasons that I chose to run for mayor, because I think in the same way that Melissa did, you can sit around and complain about it and tell people what you think they should do, or you can step up and you can do the work yourself.
And it's important to point out, you are a local government geek, right? I mean, you literally ran the organization of, innovative local government officials and folks around the country. So you came into this with a lot of experience, or at least knowledge, and ran for mayor against someone who endorsed you and then decided to run against you, won by a landslide, came into the office, and while you experienced to deal with COVID and many, many difficult things, one of the advantageous things for you, I would suggest, is that the year after you became mayor, there was an election for president of the United States, and a new administration came in, and a friend of yours became the Secretary of Transportation.
Yeah, that was a nice bonus.
Yeah, Pete Buttigieg was somebody that you had known as a mayor and gotten to know pretty well. You also knew a lot of other people in the Biden administration. In fact, I know you'll defer and say no, but there was talk that if Kamala Harris had been elected president, that she might well have asked you to come to Washington, and certainly there was no question that she had an immense affection for you. As I would note that, Melissa, that whenever candidates for higher office come, they will ask about each of you, right? They know you from politics and stuff like that. And so there was this administration there that was very, at least open to what you had to ask for and also what you were seeking to do. And I want you to reflect on that for a moment before we talk about our current circumstance, in a sense to tell us a little bit about what it means to have an administration you can work with.
I'm going to try and not get too upset because it's really sad. It was amazing, honestly. I mean, I do think, over the years that I have paid attention to government, and it's been mostly local government. So for those who don't know, I did work here on campus at what is now called the High Road Strategy Center, and I ran the Mayor's Innovation Project. And so I got to work with mayors, for about 13 years all over the country and geek out on policy at the local level. But one of the things that I have observed, both at the local level and I think really at any other level in government, is that who you hire makes a tremendous difference. So of course who we elect makes a tremendous difference, but who they hire is, I think, the marker of how much you can get done in any given administration. And when President Biden came into office, he hired an unusual proportion of former mayors, I will say, and former local government officials, which to me was a really good sign, because if you are in local government, you don't have the luxury of not doing things, right? You have to get things done. It's the level of government that's the closest to your community. And believe me, it's not just Madison. Most communities have very high expectations for their local governments. So seeing Mayor Pete come in to DOT, but also Marcia Fudge, who's a former mayor, anyway, there's a whole slew, I could go down the list, but there's a whole slew of former mayors that came in, which I think really was part of why the administration was able to be so effective. And, obviously, there was a lot going on, and yet, the ability to pass bills with large amounts of funding, much of which went directly to local governments, I think was a really key piece for what we were able to do in Madison subsequently. And yes, of course, it's nice to know people in DC, but much more important is the fact that they understood local government and that they were open to hearing from mayors all around the country about what we needed and what was going to be most effective in helping our communities, and then really helping us deliver on that. And of course, there's more they could have done. But I think what they did do was really remarkable, and I hope, assuming we still have history professors a decade from now, that history will really reflect on the Biden administration and understand really the unprecedented level of progress that was made in that time.
Madison's mayor. Melissa Agard, you had a different experience in that you had come from county government into state government, but you had come in that Walker era, right? And in many ways you were in a lot of fights, right? And they were uphill struggles. But in little ways into your tenure in the Capitol, Tony Evers was elected governor of Wisconsin. And he has always had to deal with a Republican legislature. But give us a sense of what that meant to have a governor, even if you couldn't have everything, a governor who was on the side of local government and on the side of counties and communities.
Yeah, so it was because ultimately of Scott Walker that I ran for the legislature. I was marching around the Capitol, and I decided, all right, if I'm marching around the Capitol, my dad told me it's okay to be uncomfortable and be the change you believe in. So that's why I took the dive from local government, being on the county board, into the state capitol building. I felt like we needed more ordinary people in there to raise their voices up. And it was chilling to be in there and see how it is that Governor Walker, his administration, and the Republican members of the legislature were treating elected legislators and staff members. Mm-hmm. And I thought, if they're treating us this way, how are they treating their constituents and the people all across the state of Wisconsin? And then when Governor Evers was elected and Josh Call was elected Attorney General, having an Attorney General that was a Democrat and a governor that was a Democrat, even though the legislature was still very gerrymandered, I felt like I could breathe again. I felt like I knew there was a protection for the people of my community. Was I going to be able to get minimum wage increased? Was I able to get cannabis legalized? Were we able to expand healthcare in Wisconsin? No, we weren't able to do those things, but we weren't bleeding anymore. The direct harm to our friends and neighbors that was happening every single day under that other administration was stopped because those two human beings who care and who are curious were elected. Elections do matter, and that was a really important moment for me to be able to see. Even though we weren't able to get our bucket list done, we were able to make a real change in our community. And having a governor who was responsive, who was willing to solve problems and roll up his sleeves and work with us and lift up and hear the fears and the dreams of all of the people across Wisconsin and not do it in a partisan manner, but do it because it is the right thing. It was wonderful for me to have a leader that I could look at and think, all right, what can I learn from you? How can we work together? How are we going to make our community be better? And then when I was elected to the Senate and then became the Democratic leader of the Senate, I was working much more closely with Governor Evers and his administration. And at that point, we were able to actually get some pretty big stuff done. We worked really hard in a bipartisan manner and were able to get more money for local governments. Now, shared revenue in Wisconsin is still pretty broken. And I can give you lots of examples how it continues to be broken, but it is better. And it is better because of Governor Evers, and it is better because we were able to put our backs into it and deliver results. And we have lovely examples of that all across the state through policy. And we also have examples of how we are frustrated, how it is that we want to continue to dream and believe in what is possible. And I know, and maybe, I don't know if we're going to talk about this, but we fought so hard for fair maps in Wisconsin, and now to see the conversation flip to the other direction where, like, really, what we need to do is gerrymander as Democrats after we've been fighting for fair maps just to offset the verbal call to action from our current president that we're going to gerrymander because they know they are so damn unpopular that they can't win elections based on their policies. They need to cheat. And again, here in Wisconsin, we're going to continue fighting for what is right. But when you're working with cheaters, it's pretty damn difficult, and with people who don't have a sense of compassion and a sense of curiosity in the work that they are doing. And I think that's one of the reasons why Satya and I are so lucky to be able to be in local government. It was a tough decision for me to go from being in the legislature, being the minority leader, building a team to become the majority leader. I saw a path, it's going to happen. Or to come back to local government and to move into the executive branch as opposed to the legislative branch, grow for myself, grow for my community. I feel like I'm right where I am supposed to be at the time that I am supposed to be here. But the work is hard, it is heavy. And with the winds that are coming at us from Washington, D.C., I think, Satya and I have shared and commiserated on how lovely it would be if this wasn't where we are, but how much more important it is that we are here than any other time in the history of our nation.
Yes. I was surprised when you made the choice to run for county executive because you had put so much energy into basically a multi-decade effort to pull state government back, and especially taking, as self-described introvert, taking the leadership role in your party there. But I remember as you were running, talking to you, and while you had a real passion for state government, it strikes me that your deepest passion, I loved talking to you as you were running, because you would talk about going out to the most remote parts of Dane County, and that notion of that grassroots governance is something that I think really means a lot to you. You can describe it better than I, but it seems that this is the notion that you can go places, ask people what they need, and then maybe actually deliver something in a much more immediate way than at state and federal level is something that really was part of what drew you in there.
It absolutely did. And I think Dane County is a microcosm of the state of Wisconsin, right? We have 60 municipalities in Dane County. A lot of people don't realize that. Cities, towns, and villages all across Dane County. We grow an exceptional amount of food here. We have our amazing capital for the state here, our university here, vibrant city center, waterways, innovation and dreaming, and being able to take what I learned in the state legislature and actually implement it here in Dane County is really quite an honor and a privilege. And one of the things that I have learned, whether I'm in Primrose or Marshall or in Fitchburg or Wanakee or here in Madison, is that there is so much more that unites us than that divides us. And it's not so much about where it is that you live, but it's about how you live and what your values are. And really the ability for us to link our arms and show the magic of local government and show how it is that when we compromise and communicate with one another, we lift each other up. And as John said earlier, we are the fastest growing county in Wisconsin. There are 72 counties in Wisconsin. We are the fastest, we are innovative, we are vibrant, and we are leading the way. Despite all the negative headwinds that are coming at us. And it is our job to continue pushing that forward and helping people understand that it is because of every single one of us and the fact that we are here and we believe in what it is that we can do together, and we're not going to give that up. And that, I think, is what makes local government and Dane County government so very, very special.
You can see who loves her job. Mayor, county executive talked about these headwinds that are coming our way. Zohar Mamdani, who's running for mayor of New York, has a phrase, or at least around him, the notion that of Trump-proofing a city, right? And his desire to Trump-proof New York. I think that's an idealistic notion. But let's talk about this reality. Yeah. You are now the mayor of a blue city, a very blue city, at a time when you have a president of the United States. I don't know that he's gotten to Madison quite yet on his list of Memphis is the target this weekend. But this is a president who actually talks about taking over cities, about holding their money back, all sorts of real challenges. Talk to me a little bit about how you think about that, and to the extent that you Trump-proof, or whatever it is that you seek to do, how do you seek to respond to that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, and I think it's a really difficult one to answer because it's coming from so many different directions on so many different issues. You know, there's the issue of funding, and you know, we have lost funding under the Trump administration, and you know, whether that's funding for vaccines coming through public health, or we had a $20 million community change grant that was going to help make affordable housing energy efficient and indoor air quality better for low-income families, and that's, I think it's gone, except we're suing them, so maybe it's not. We'll see. And then, you know, and you go from something like that to the bigger picture on funding, which is, you know, really dwarfs what's happening even at the local government level, which is everything with SNAP and Medicaid and the social safety net, that when that gets cut at the federal level, it is us that has to figure out how to deal with the implications of that and the real harm that's done to families. Because, you know, apparently at the federal level they don't care about families, actually, but we still care. And so we still have to find a way to try and help. So, you know, some of it is that. Some of it is trying to find the ways that local government can fill in the gaps or make do and still take care of our people. And that's something that, you know, we do every day. Some of it is, if you take, for example, the issue of immigration and ICE, you know, in conversation with the folks in our community that might have a different documentation status than I do. You know, some people's instinct is to stand up and shout from the rooftops. And the people who are most impacted have actually said to me, please don't. Please don't make us a target. Please don't put people at risk. And I respect that. right? And so I think it is really every day sort of carefully navigating what are we yelling about, what are we pushing back on, where are we taking legal action if there's legal action to be taken, where are we trying to muster resources locally, whether that is public money or private money to fill in gaps. I think it's notable what we're seeing in Chicago. So you mentioned Memphis, right? So obviously they went to LA, they went to DC, they threatened Chicago. They are now talking about Memphis. They've also talked about New Orleans. I just would notice, look up who the mayors of all those cities are, because there's a pattern. And I feel like maybe a pattern that makes me a little farther down on the list, but it's not, I don't feel good about that. But you see what Chicago did, you see what Mayor Johnson, you see what Governor Pritzker did. They stood up right away and they started fighting back. And I think that is why you are not seeing more in Chicago right now, right? And I think that action, you saw it even early on, even with Doge, or as some people like to call it, doggy, that when people pushed back and shone a light on what they were doing and talked about why it was wrong, they would pivot to something else. It's not that they're not still doing harm, right? But it is possible to stop bullies by standing up to them. And so that, I think, is part of how we Trump-proof communities, is just by standing up to bullies and not complying in advance. And I could go on for a long time, and I won't, but one more thought, which is, you see you see these law firms, right? You see these universities, unfortunately, that are cutting deals with the administration. And I would submit to you that at least in the bigger cities, let's say the top 100, you don't see mayors doing that. You don't see local government cutting deals like that. And that is because we know that we have to take care of our people no matter what. And that the path to really taking care of our people is not giving in to authoritarianism, it's standing up to it.
Mayor Madison. The county executive, Dane County. Counties, look, we've seen a collapse of a lot of media in this country and a lot of the quality of media all over. And so coverage of local government is often not what it should be. As a result, many people don't know that county government is really in the front line of a tremendous amount of human services. And so when you have a Congress dealing with a big, beautiful bill that's cutting unimaginable amounts of money out of Medicaid, Medicare, as well as the threat there, but then also cutting SNAP benefits and stuff, that's real for the services that you have to oversee the delivery of. So tell me about, I know some of these impacts haven't quite hit yet, but that's got to be something that you're thinking about every day.
Yeah, so bottom line, people are scared. I have an analogy. I'm an analogy person. I think Satya is picking up on this. I feel like we are living in a snow globe right now, and that there's a big monster that picks us up and shakes us. I mean, you don't know how hard they're going to shake and for how long they're going to shake, and maybe they're going to put it down, and it was, just a threat. But sometimes it's much more than a threat. This is all calculated. The unpredictability of what it is that they are doing, the inciting of fear in everyday people, the threatening to elected officials that if we stand up and we say something against this president, that we're going to be scooped up. My kids are afraid. My children are afraid.
You have kids who are still school age in that?
I have kids that are at home with me still.
And they feel a fear for you because of how the president and others talk about arresting or deporting local elected officials.
Scooping folks up. And, you know, I have privilege. I have a home that I get to live in, and I have locks on my doors, and I know people who I can call that will help to protect me, but I know that a lot of the people who I represent don't have that. And it is my job to stand up and protect them. And that is why it is more important now than ever that we don't sell out on our values, that we continue pushing forward, even though these are frightening and unpredictable times that we are all living in. And I think it is important for us to continue centering our values and checking in with one another and reminding one another why it is that we do what we do and why it is that the communities that we represent in particular are continuing to thrive. It's because we do that. We will hold that line. But we need to know that even when these contracts are coming in from the federal government to continue funding certain programs, if you scour through them, you're going to notice that the language in those contracts is changing. I have some notes here because it's so absurd.
You came well prepared.
Some of the contracts they're sending us right now are saying that we cannot use the word togetherness in our contracts.
All right.
Togetherness, right? Oh, that's a really scary thing, that we're hanging out with one another. So as you can imagine,
it could be a problem for a lot of churches, I think, as well.
I am super grateful that we have an amazing corporation council here within Dane County that is helping us scour through these contracts, find these languages, and figure out what it is that we can do to get ahead of it, and also find legal actions that we can join in on to continue to protect our community, whether it's DOT, whether it's HUD, whether it is the term sanctuary city, the threats of the National Guard and ICE rolling up into our communities, the threats of the budget cuts that, John, that you mentioned, that will affect the services that we provide in Dane County that many people don't know we provide, because they are quiet, life-saving services that unless you depend on them, you're not going to know. Our nursing home out at Badger Prairie. Imagine if we did not have that. 120 of our most vulnerable residents in Dane County, where would they go? What would we do with them? SNAP, kids who are hungry. Our seniors who need the food, or they're going to be splitting their pills or not paying their electricity bills. Money that we depend on to build more housing within our communities. Those contracts are coming to us with these poison pills in them. So not only is it the threat of losing the money and the actions that are happening in the Congress, but it is also the bureaucratic business every single day that we need to pay more attention to on top of our day-to-day responsibility. And I think it's a real job for us to continue taking care of ourselves and letting people know what it is we can do as individuals to keep a calm within our community. I had a conversation earlier this week with a young woman who is married to a man who is working his way through becoming a citizen here. And he has not crossed that finish line. And he received a notice that he needs to go to Milwaukee to check in with ICE. So while we may not see ICE on our streets, and while we may not see the National Guard rolling into Madison or to Dane County, our neighbors are directly impacted by this. These are small business owners in our community that provide joy to children and families because of the business that they hold here. And it is very likely that they will be separated because he is law-abiding. He is going to go. He's going to follow the rules. And it's not happening here in Dane County, but is happening to our neighbors and our friends. So we're going to continue meeting people where they are at. We're going to continue protecting people the very best that we can, and ensuring that the most vulnerable amongst us have what it is that they need. But we're not going to get it right all the time because of how dangerous these people are upstream from us.
And I would submit that we can't do it alone. We need the community, we need the private sector to stand with us in this, because local government we're going to do the best that we can within our structures. and within the funding that we have. But we do really need our community to embrace how welcoming we are here in Madison and Dane County, and to take care of each other. And that could look like a lot of different things. You know, there are examples that I can't give publicly, but I would suggest you go, you know, talk to Voces de la Frontera, for example, for ideas on how to take care of people that might need it. But you know, we are going to do the best we can, but we also need everybody to be standing with us.
Melissa would even tell us that in Dane County, tariffs affect farmers, and we have farmers. And because this Dane County is such a diverse, economically, culturally, and so many other ways place, that's a real factor. Both of you have spoken about our immigrant communities and the fact that ICE has not been a huge presence, yet it's often been a presence in rural areas. Yes. And we've seen it turning up a lot there. And so it's very possible that Melissa might deal with it, might be running into it first even. I want to ask about another community, and you are a member of the LGBTQ plus community, and very proudly, and that is a community that this administration has sent many, many rough signals as regards. Madison and Dane County have been places of incoming for a lot of folks, and I would appreciate if you'd give us some thoughts in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it just feels like how many decades backwards are we going to go in the course of a year or two? You know, Wisconsin, Madison in particular, has been a place where we have fought really hard to protect the LGBTQ plus community for decades. And, you know, we've had some really remarkable trailblazers that managed to pass really some of the first in the nation laws to protect queer folks, my community, from discrimination, for example. We are proudly represented by Mark Pocan and Tammy Baldwin, just for example. And so I think we really, there's a lot at stake, right? We have a long and proud history of taking care of the community, and to see the threats now, you know, I think it is only a matter of time before there's a case in front of the Supreme Court to overturn marriage. And I, you know, I hear people regularly like, well, do I get married now, or do I not, or what do I do? I have people who are married who are going now to get the backup legal documents that they thought they never would have to do because they thought marriage was going to be enough to take care of them and to protect their families. I think there's a lot of fear, honestly. And now apparently trans folks won't be able to have guns. Who knew that Republicans were for gun control? Yeah, I mean, I just feel like it's just one more place where it's just crazy town, and yet it instills fear, it breeds division and a sense of scarcity around rights and protections, and that is all, as Melissa said, that's all on purpose, right? They want us to be divided. They want us to be afraid. And I hope, and I think this is true of Madison and of Dane County, I hope that our response to that is not to be afraid or overly afraid, and not to be divided, but rather to figure out how we can use the strength and the power and the rights and the privileges that we do still have to protect all of us. Not just us individually or our families, but really everyone in our community. Because that's what it takes, right? We know history, and it is our job to make sure that this country doesn't repeat it.
Yeah. Melissa Agard, a lot of your career was in the state capitol. There's a lot of talk right now about how important the 2026 elections are. And of course, most of that talk tends toward discussions of Congress and House and Senate. But I'm interested, because you know so much about state government, how important is 2026 and where it might go in Wisconsin for Dane County, for Madison, and places like this? Because it is at least within the realm of possibility that 2026 could be a transformational election as regards what state government could do. Give us a sense of what that might mean.
So I'm going to start off with a little statistic that isn't exactly the question that you asked.
That's okay.
But let's remember that over a third, the reason why we are where we are is over a third of the eligible voters in our country sat out this election. So it's not so much about who voted for this president and who didn't vote for this president. It's about who didn't vote. And we know that when people vote, we all do better. And what we need to be paying attention to are these people who are sitting out elections and why it is that they're sitting out elections. And 2026 is going to be a big year. And it's not just because of the fall elections. Let's think about our spring elections. Half of the Common Council is going to be up in the spring. The whole county board is going to be up in the spring. And remember I said there's 60 municipalities in Dane County? Most of those municipalities are going to have elections. And local government matters. And I have literally knocked on doors of folks that have said, I only vote in presidential elections. Here in the city of Madison, that has been told to me. So we need to figure out how we get people to turn out in all elections, because that third of the people, it's more than that, I think, that didn't turn out to vote is why we are here. And elections have consequences. So let's think about the April election, not only these local elections, but we've got a Supreme Court election there. Yeah. And, you know, Chris Taylor, she's going to hit a home run there because we're going to have her back in a spring election. And we may have a majority on that Supreme Court, but you never know when someone's going to get sick, when someone's going to make a career change. We need to batten down the hatches. Every election matters. And then we have the potential of 5 statewide elected constitutional officers on the ballot here in Wisconsin: governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, treasurer. And what is Josh going to do? Is he going to run for governor? Then there's the AG. All of those. The whole assembly and half of the Senate. And I believe that there is a clear path for all 5 of those seats statewide to be held by Democrats. And I think there is the potential, a very good potential. And, you know, I'm going to pat myself on the back for the building that I did when I was the minority leader for the state Senate to flip from red to blue. That's going to happen. But that's not going to happen without all of us believing that it's going to happen and putting our backs into it. Folks, think about what shoes you're going to wear. You need really good shoes. Think about what pen you're going to bring out with you. I know I'm an introvert. Knocking on doors is hard. Picking up the phone and talking to your friends is hard. But it is because of the folks that have sat out that we haven't been able to get this done. But again, we are decades ahead of what is happening right now at the national level. We saw this already with the Walker elections and the recall. So we are a decade ahead of fixing things on the national level. We will show the whole country what it looks like to flip what it is that we have been experiencing here, the maniacal destruction of democracy that has been in the playbook of the Republican Party, and Wisconsin was the petri dish for that. And we're going to prove that it's not happening anymore. But it's not because of who's running for office. It's because you guys are willing to be part of the solution, and that we are all going to put our backs into this and believe that it can get done. Democracy isn't something that just happens. It's not a noun. It's not a chair. Democracy is not a chair. Democracy is a verb. It's something that we do. And I'm in it to win it, and I hope that everyone here is as well.
Says the introvert.
You'd better be careful talking that way. They're going to draft you into the governor's race, and then you. Obviously, if Melissa's vision is played out, it matters to have state government on your side.
Absolutely.
And for shared revenues and everything like that. But also for something, and I want to, before we finish up today, bring this in. We talk about Madison and Dane County as fastest growing, rapidly expanding places. But this is challenging, right? And resources are necessary. Not just you can tax people here, and they're actually quite generous, as referendums show. But at a certain point, you need state, maybe federal resources, and that helps in making this rapid growth functional. Talk to us a little bit about what we're up against, just that growth, but also how having a state government on your side, ultimately maybe a federal government on your side, makes a big difference there.
Yeah. You know, we in Madison are just really inches away from breaking 300,000 population, and Dane County is growing just as fast as we are, I think. And so we talk about the population growth, which honestly, if you stop and think about it, that's the good side of the problem to have. Right? Like the alternative is a shrinking community, and I have watched too many cities shrink, and it does not end well, right? It is much more difficult to deal with that. So we have the good side of the problem, but it is still a challenge. But I think the important thing to remember is that not only are we driving the population growth of the state, we're also driving the economic growth of the state. And of every dollar that Madison sends to the state, we get back 18 cents. And so we're...
Let me make you repeat that. Slow it down, repeat it one more time.
For every dollar that we as a community, through our taxes, send to the state of Wisconsin, we get back 18 cents. And I'm not talking city government, I am talking the community gets back 18 cents on the dollar. So we are driving the growth, we are driving the economic growth, and we are subsidizing the entire state of Wisconsin. So I don't mind, because you know what? There are places around the state that need us. And I believe in a strong state, and I believe that everybody, you know, everybody's kids should be educated, and that communities should be able to function. But like maybe we could get 50 cents back. So yes, it matters deeply who is in state government, because what we deal with when our population grows, and again, good problem to have, is that we have to have our infrastructure grow along with it. And I'm not just talking about streets and pipes, although that's a lot of it. You know, you have more population, you need more sewer pipes, and you need more water pipes, and you certainly need more streets and sidewalks and bike paths. But you also need more fire apparatus and firefighters to go on the apparatus, and you need more police officers, and you need more libraries, and you need more parks, and you need more people that take care of those parks, and you need more foresters because we're planting more trees, and I could go on and on and on through all of the things that local government does, whether that's at the city level or the county level or in villages or towns. When we have more people to take care of, we need more resources to do that. And I think that that, in part, is the responsibility of the state, right? To partner with us, and because our economy is driving the economy of the state, to give us the ability to invest in the infrastructure that underpins our economy and our quality of life so that we can keep doing that. That's the virtuous cycle, right? If we can keep making those investments, we will continue to drive the economy of the state, and Wisconsin will continue to be a prosperous state, and that's the way it should be. So I don't begrudge our position as a leader, and I don't begrudge taking care of the rest of the state at all. I just would like the state to invest back in that success so that we can continue to succeed.
Yeah. You two have just been so great and so good on speaking about all these issues, and we are now virtually at our conclusion, time-wise, because we have to make way for Ben Wickler to talk about, you know, what he's doing. But before we go, you and I have talked a lot over the years, going back a very, very long time, and one of the realities of your experience is that you grew up very working class. And your playground was the state capitol, literally running around the halls a bit and stuff like that. But as we close off, I just want to ask you, Alyssa, having come up the way that you did from a working class experience into leadership in this place, this is a time where I would argue that we really have to center those who don't have the easiest way in. And as a county executive, I think that's a huge part of how you think about, especially in a moment like this. And how does government best center those who don't have the easiest route up and who, in fact, are going to get hit the hardest?
So we need another hour to talk about that. But what I'm going to say is right now, that people don't believe in politicians. They don't believe in government. And my kids have grown up their whole entire lives in a system that is immensely broken. And I think that now more than ever, and you know, I sound like the biggest cheerleader for local politics right now because I really believe deeply that local politics is how we get ourselves out of this swirl. We see the struggles that our neighbors are experiencing. We see the celebrations that they are able to have. And we are able to connect what's happening in Marshall and in Primrose and in Mazo-Maney and in Cambridge and in the city of Madison because we are in the community and the community sees us and tells us that. And it is our job to help tell the story of good government and to model good government and to lift that up because pendulums swing. This is something that I will appreciate about Senator Risser, and I had a short time that I was in the Capitol with him. But he would talk about that pendulum and how it swings. And right now it feels really terrible and really scary, but it's not always going to be that way. And you know why it's not always going to be that way? Is because we believe in one another, because we are compassionate and we are curious and we believe and we are of our community. So, hey, Dane County, let's not give up on ourselves, despite what is happening in Washington, D.C., and in so many capitals across this globe. Right now, we are the magic, we are the glue, and we're going to take care of one another. I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, because certainly it is not, but we can do this. But we can't get so afraid that we are paralyzed, and that's what conversations like this allow us to highlight. So thank you so much for sharing some of your time with us.
You can keep your Tim Walz and your Governor Pritzker. I'm going to take Dane County Executive Melissa Agard and Madison Mayor Satya Rhodes-Conway and tell you this is where the future of government lies. Ladies and gentlemen, please give them the round of applause that they deserve. Thank you so much. You're great.